We made it again. Glory to God.
Yeah.
We're here.
With our special
and we have
guest.
a special guest, Father Paul, my spiritual father, my parish priest, who
special in the most negative sense.
What's that?
I'm special in the most negative sense possible.
Well, I'm grateful.
Big
for
air quotes special.
Yeah, right. Yeah, short bus special.
Yeah.
The short bus special. Father Paul is here with us. No, we're very grateful to have him. Father Paul has an extremely busy schedule. He's the lead priest of a very busy, very quickly growing, rapidly growing parish in Salt Lake City, Utah. It's the parish where I attend, and so if you want to take something out on somebody, you can come find me. That's fine. You can punch me. It's good. I got it. I need it. But no, Father Paul we asked him to join us and talk about the saints and who the saints are and why the saints matter in our lives. So, Father Paul, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome. I thought I'd throw out my uneducated and naive take on what I've learned doing this with Jeremy. And I was telling Jeremy.
Hold on. Before we start, though, let's have Father Paul pray.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's right. It's my fault. Father Paul, will you pray for us?
Indeed. Glory to thee, O God. Glory to thee, O heavenly King, Comforter, the Spirit of truth, who art everywhere present and fillest all things. Treasury of good things and giver of life, come and abide in us, cleanse us from every stain, and save our souls, O good one. O Lord, bless.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, as I was saying, I thought I'd throw out my experience up to this point. So because I've had such a very, solitary Orthodox life, unfortunately, I have to say, I always tell people if I ever end up being a widow and able to just do whatever, I'll probably move to some Eastern European country right next to a church and just be there all day. But what I've learned doing Lives of the Saints with Jeremy up to this point is how these saints have permeated into my consciousness, if I want to say it that way. Their lives and the events and their responses to the world and their responses to God have just completely permeated my being. My patron saint is Saint Seraphim of Sarov. And I chose him because all I knew about him was that he lived in the woods with a bear. So that was kind of my story. And in the meanwhile, it's kind of, I don't want to get into the whole gist of it because it's a really long story, but I asked my priest, the priest who took me in online in a Zoom call during the lockdowns as a catechumen in Victoria, BC. I asked him about putting up an icon of Saint Seraphim in the woods. And there was a woman at the church and she said to me, I asked her first, I said, is that okay? She was helping me with my icon corner and, stuff like that. And she said, do you know anything about Saint Seraphim? And I said, no, I don't actually. She goes, oh my goodness, Shari. He did that. He put icons up in the woods and pilgrimaged to them. Because I said to her, because I thought maybe I could pilgrimage and that would be my, way of participating in the church in some way at home. So anyway, I did that. It took me almost a year to put it up. I had it, my husband built a beautiful, I don't know what you call it, but it's like a little housing for the icon. Mm. And it sat here for almost a year. Jeremy actually bought me another icon and he said, now you can put yours up. And but the real reason I didn't put it up was because I knew if I did, it was going to change me. And I didn't know if I was ready for that. And it did. And so, and it coincided, it was all coinciding with doing this together with Jeremy and learning about the saints. So, and I'm getting kind of emotional actually talking about it, but I've found the saints to be absolutely life-giving to me. And they've been teaching me what it means to be a Christian. And yeah, so that's my personal journey, and it's really one that I'm mostly encountering them. Like, I deliberately didn't read about Saint Seraphim because I wanted to encounter him, and I did, like I did, in the sense that I asked him, I said, where do you, because I had an extra icon of him, and I was wondering where I should hang it in my house. And then I thought, well, no, he's actually alive. So why don't I ask him? And I said, where do you want to be? And he said, put me in the woods. And that's where I got the idea. And then when Christy told me about him and that he did that, it frightened me, actually. It frightened me because I was like, well, I wasn't hearing things, obviously. So anyways, the saints have just been super powerful to me. Doing this with Jeremy has been really key to my own spiritual journey within an Orthodox context. So yeah, and before we started the show, I said to Father Paul I was going to tell him this little story, and maybe he could elaborate on that and also correct me where I'm wrong. So I'll let you take it, Father Paul.
You left me a broad opening.
Yeah, I know, it's a wide open door.
I don't know where to start. That isn't going to take me down a long winding path, and I'll be talking forever.
Oh,
that's what we do on the show.
That's actually perfect.
Yeah.
I think the first thing I'd express is that Christianity is not a systematic religion. In the sense that it's not something that can be simply studied and you learn the right answers and suddenly you understand it. It's a life. Right. And more than a life, it's life more abundantly, as Christ talks about. We make a mistake in the West, not to go on this West bashing path that a lot of people go on. The West produced a lot of beautiful things, but in the West we've gone down this very strange path in which we think that in order to really understand something, we first need to study it immensely and deeply and at length. And then when we feel like we have a grasp on it, then we can begin to dip our toe in. The world never really worked that way. You think of like St. Augustine, who was this like the main Manichaean philosopher, and you can call it Manichaeism a religion. He learned it by engaging in it. And the more he engaged in it, the more he understood it. When he began to see the failings and the shortcomings of Manichaeism, he entered Christianity, and he began by attending the church where St. Ambrose was the bishop and the hierarch. He didn't have personal encounters with St. Ambrose. St. Ambrose was too busy. He would do services, and then he would immediately go to his little hermitage where some of his closest disciples would follow him, and he would study and learn and pray, and then he'd go back and do services, preach, and then go back and forth. And so St. Augustine learned by just simply being in his presence and hearing his preaching, and then he did the same thing. He engaged. He didn't step back and study for years and years. In order to really understand it, he realized he had to touch it. And so where I'm going with this is that we see this mistake happening kind of all over the place. There are many who are engaging in orthodoxy by spending years watching videos online and listening to lectures before they even step foot in divine liturgy, which is not really the way that we do it. We need to encounter first. And if we do it the wrong way and simply try to study it, we can end up doing something like studying the scriptures without the lives of the saints. And that's the danger, because when we study the scriptures, we're going to interpret it through the lens in which we view the world, which is a broken, fallen lens.
Right.
When we look at the lives of the saints, we see the Gospels lived. You know, if we just read the scriptures and had no lives of saints and then asked, how then should we live? Different people are going to come to different answers. But when we look at the lives of the saints, we see the Gospels enfleshed in the human heart. St. Justin Popovich calls the saints, he calls the apostles, but through that, all the saints, little Christs repeated. Why? You know, that may seem blasphemous, but it's not blasphemous to anybody who understands when St. Paul writes to the Galatians, it is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. Christ becomes reincarnated in a poetic way, we could say. I mean, there's a real way, but not in the same way that the incarnation itself occurred. But he makes a throne out of every human heart where he finds a pure enough room to set his throne in. And that's what all these figures really are, is they're little Christ repeated. They can say with St. Paul, it's no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. And so when we encounter the lives of the saints, what we end up doing is seeing the lived gospel. And suddenly we read the scriptures in a completely new way. And one other little point I'll make is that it's a really beautiful thing that as we learn about the saints, every now and then a saint will choose us. And it sounds like that's what happened with you and St. Seraphim of Sarov. Sometimes a saint will choose us. Many times when people are looking for a patron, the saint will choose them. And this doesn't happen just once. My wall behind me, which is either admired by people who watch my videos or made fun of. Always like they'll ask, is there such a thing as too many icons? My wife thinks yes, I think no. But I made some drastic changes because I went to Romania recently. I picked up most of these are new icons over here. And some of these, I'll give you one example. There's one right here, St. Kalinik of Cernica Monastery. St. Kalinik was a saint who I had not a lot of personal interest in when I went to Cernica Monastery. There's another saint I wanted to go venerate, who's also there, who was his spiritual father, who was named St. George. And St. George of Cernica, I wanted to venerate his relics mostly because of a really stupid reason. I don't care though. It's because if you look at his icon, he's got the most magnificent beard. And I loved the icon so much. I said, I can't wait to go venerate him. And so I walked in the church and I saw the icon of St. George and I saw his skull. And I went and I did my prostrations and venerated it. And it was funny because I went, this was a nice experience. But the real, most popular saint is St. Kalinik, who, again, I had no real connection to. I didn't know much about. I read a little bit about him on the way to the monastery. But other than that, nothing really stuck out. And then I went and did prostrations in front of his relics. And I kissed his skull, which was fragrant. And I had this whoosh. I can't describe it. I had an encounter. And ever since then, I felt this incredible closeness to St. Kalinik. And so sometimes the saints choose us. And that encounter does exactly what you just described. Every now and then, I'll just call him to mind. Times when I'm feeling overwhelmed or depressed or anxious or whatever it is. And I call St. Kalinik to mind, and suddenly the same peace that I felt at his relics begins to settle again. So, for those who question the reality of the saints or that they have any connection to us whatsoever, we either believe that Christ destroyed death or we don't. We either believe when St. Paul says, for me to live is Christ and to die is gain, or we don't. But if we believe that death in Christ is actually gain, and that we are all united in Christ because we're all part of the same body, and that death has been destroyed, then the saints become not just distant figures who we can be inspired by, but they become family members and friends. And the more we seek to emulate them, the more we become their friends. And the more we emulate them, the more we become not just servants, but friends of Christ. The saints open up a world of the scriptures and church history and liturgics, everything in a way that shows we are not worshiping a God that's written about in a 2,000-year-old manual. This is the living God in the living church, and the Holy Spirit is just as present now as he was at Pentecost. Amen.
That was, I had a brief You know how someone will say like one little sentence to you and it changes your whole framework, worldview. I mean, I grew up in a Protestant Plymouth Brethren. I don't know if you're familiar with them. Family, but my parents didn't convert to Christianity till I was around 14, and I was never really a willing participant in their thing. But anyway, when I went to the church that took me in as a catechumen, which I did, I went to Vancouver Island, which is like, 9 or 10 hour journey for me. And I walked into the room. I just into the sanctuary. I couldn't hold it together. And it was because the saints were there, that was the thing that really blew me away. And I was talking to Father Kyle about it, and he said, Shari, there are no dead people in Christianity. This was the one-liner. And I was like, duh. Yeah.
But it's not the way that most Christians today, the heterodox, live. So it's not a surprise to me that was a big flashpoint moment for you.
Was, yeah.
Because as a Lutheran, that's not how we lived.
No.
In fact, much of our culture, even the Christian culture, has become death avoidant, which is why we've rejected the idea of funerals in favor of celebrations of life, as if the funeral is a bad thing. Right. Read the Orthodox funeral service. It's stark. And it's way more stark than we realize, because we have a process of, for those who do embalming and preserve the bodies are preserved in ways that they weren't when that was written 1,300 years ago. When you read it with that in mind, you go, my goodness, this slaps you in the face with death, but in a way where it's prayers for the person, knowing that it continues to help the soul, and it's comfort for us. And that idea of the living reality that death is literally an aberration that Christ came to destroy.
Yeah. And
that work has been accomplished. There is no death.
Right. Yeah, so you're not alone in that room, Father Paul.
No, not at all. Well, and I've got Saint Seraphim. He's right here.
Yeah.
It's actually a very early icon that I bought. I love this one. This is one of my favorite icons of him, and because it shows him like really glowing with light. I've never been able to find that one again. So
my sponsors were kind enough to commission. There's a hermitage about 4 hours from here towards Vancouver, but a little off the beaten trail. And there's 3 brothers there, and they commissioned an icon of Saint Seraphim for me from them, Brother Moses. And he wrote me and said, this is going to take a while because I'm not really good at this. So he sent me the one that I actually have up in the woods. He made me like a quote unquote temporary icon, but it was the first one I ever had of him. And so now that one is in the woods, and I have the handwritten one from Brother Moses, which is really beautiful.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Can I tell, because you mentioned that little story about what exactly was said to you in the church again? What were the words about death?
Oh, there are no dead people in Christianity.
There are no dead people in Christianity. I'll tell a quick little story. This happened about, 10 months ago or so in our parish. Jeremy, I don't know if you know the story. The person or the people, I should say, that this happened to haven't been very public about it yet. And so I'm not going to say who it was, but there was a couple going through a very, very difficult situation with a family member of theirs who was very, very ill and probably near death. And they had a black man walk up to them and one by one say to them, things are going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And they said he was just full of joy. And well, the parish that I serve is downtown. And so they came and asked me, they said, you don't happen to have like a tall homeless man who's black with kind of a grayish beard who hangs out? And I said, no, I've never had a homeless person like that describes that. And they said, yeah, we didn't think so. And so they described me what happened. And this man went up to first the husband and then the wife, same words, same everything, radiating peace and joy. And this situation that was causing them such angst they felt immense peace around his presence. And then, after he had talked to both of them, they looked for him and he wasn't there until they looked up on the wall and they said it was St. Moses the Black. So it was the fresco there that we have on the wall. And they looked at it and said, that's the man. That's the one who came and talked to us. Wow. So indeed, they're living. They're very much alive.
Mm-hmm. I can tell you one fun story. So Jeremy and I met through an online community, and 4 years ago, I think now, there was a young woman who was a missionary in, and I always forget where, somewhere in Africa, and she was doing Bible translation. She had been there for 7 years, and she had been talking, I think she talked to Paul Vanderklay actually in a conversation with him about the fact that there are no monasteries in Protestantism, and a lot of Protestant women especially end up being monastics in the missionary field. And she had kind of resigned herself to that. She was 30 something and she didn't really think she would ever get married and have children, and she was just going to live her life as a single Christian woman in service to God. And her and I got to talking and becoming friends. And then she ended up asking me or telling me that she suddenly wanted to have children and get married. She was still in Africa at the time. And I said to her, well, God did make you a woman. So I think it's okay if you feel those feelings. Then the lockdowns happened. She had to come home. She was more engaged in the community. And long story short, she met a young man because I kind of pushed her in that direction. And the reason I pushed her in that direction, which I normally don't do, I'm not a matchmaker. But I was upstairs vacuuming one day, and suddenly this voice just kind of stopped me in my tracks and said, when are you going to tell Shelley what you've been noticing about Nathan? And I was like, never. Like, it's never happening. Okay. And, I just kind of pushed it away. And I thought, oh, it's just me being stupid. But it didn't sound like me, actually. I know my own thoughts, And this went on every day for about a week. And finally, I kind of pointed her in that direction. I said, okay, fine. I was just like done with it. It was so annoying. They got married. They have 3 children, and she became an Orthodox Christian. Nathan was an Orthodox Christian. And yeah. So, but then when they got married, he said, there's something, Shari, I didn't tell you. I went to, it was a different parish. He's in Philadelphia. It was a different parish somewhere. And he went to venerate Saint Xenia and he asked her for a wife. The same day that I had that annoying thought or voice. I mean, I can say it was a voice because it didn't feel like me. Mm-hmm. And when he told me that, I was just like all up and down with goosebumps, because. And then Jeremy told me that, and maybe you can clarify this for me. Not that I don't believe Jeremy, but in Orthodoxy, when a miracle happens, like a myrrh-bearing icon or something, Jeremy was explaining that generally speaking, there's an exorcism. Is that how it goes? There's an exorcism?
Yeah, I don't know that it's necessarily an exorcism, but there is a prayer. So, for instance, the Hawaii icon, the Ivron icon of Hawaii, when that's just a print. For those who know about this icon, the Ivron icon in Hawaii is beautifully myrrh-streaming icon. Many miracles have happened with this icon. But when it started to stream myrrh, the owner of this icon, he and his wife smelled this fragrance in their house. They thought maybe somebody spilled some perfume or something, and they found it was just lying on a shelf. I mean, it wasn't even displayed, nothing. It was just lying up, and it was just myrrh was streaming out of it. Again, a print. It's just a print.
Yeah.
And so they did what you traditionally do. They took it to the bishop, who read prayers over it, and then kept it there at the metropolis, where it continued to stream myrrh. And the bishop eventually brought it back after the prayers were read and said, "This is a genuine miracle of the Panagia." And then he told him, "You will be the protector of this icon, and you'll travel around with it." And he said, what am I going to do? Quit my job and just do this for a living? He said, "Yes, the Panagia will protect you in this," and that's what he's done ever since. So it is. I don't know that the prayer itself is. I don't know. Maybe it could be. Maybe it's a direct exorcism, or I don't know exactly what prayer is read. But there is a prayer that's read to confirm that this is a genuine miracle and not a deception.
Right.
And in fact, the same thing happens with incorrupt relics. There is a service that's done of washing with holy water, and Saint Cleopa of Romania has an article that you can find in English in the book. It's called "The Value of the Soul," I think, and he goes over, I think, 10 reasons why relics may be incorrupt, and the first 9 are all negative. they're all bad reasons.
Oh, okay.
They're things that you don't want. And then he gets the 10th and he goes, "Oh, and it may be a sign of sanctity too." so this is kind of like, this is how we approach Orthodoxy really does stand with one foot on earth and one foot in heaven. We're not surprised by the miraculous. The miraculous, we are neither obsessive over those things, nor are we dismissive of them.
Right.
You simply make the sign of the cross, say glory to God, and then go on with life, because the miraculous happens around us every day. And any priest will tell you the greatest miracles are when an unrepentant heart becomes repentant.
Yeah.
Because those things seem much more impossible than the myrrh-streaming icons, the fragrant relics, and miraculous healings of cancer, things like that. But when it comes to those things, we're still cautious, because just as dismissing them can be dangerous, so also becoming overly obsessed with them can become dangerous. In fact, I've met Orthodox Christians who have such an obsession with these things that I notice it becomes a distraction from their own repentance. And they start to see signs and wonders everywhere. And I typically tell them, you need to relax and live the mundane spiritual life, because the mundane spiritual life is where the real growth occurs. And again, these signs and wonders, many of these the relics of these saints were miraculously fragrant, and we had many experiences of grace in Romania. Those were great. But ultimately we have to go back to our prayer corner, put the candle on, the incense on, kneel down, and just go back to our repentance. And that's what creates those things in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
I was going to share when I heard about St. George the first time. My wife's name means princess in Persian, and when I heard the story of St. George killing a dragon to save a princess, it was like instant. I was just like, "Oh, yep, there you go, St. George." And then later I found out, so my wife is half Turkish. Later I found out that St. George also has a special place in his heart for the Turkish people and for Constantinople, and still prays for them, still intercedes, and still wants to convert Anatolia back to Christianity. So, I got layers and layers of meaning that were added on after I originally, I was going to go with Prophet Jeremiah. My name's Jeremy. I was going to go with Prophet Jeremiah, and then I heard the story of St. George, and it was just like I just instantly knew. I was like, no, St. George is. I had a feeling like St. George had always been praying for me. I just had a feeling that he had. This wasn't the beginning of my relationship with St. George. When I heard that story, I just knew that he had been interceding for me my whole life. And there were specific incidents, like looking back on my life, where I know I was protected by his prayers, where I was in vulnerable situations that could have been very awful, and I somehow just got through those situations innocently, really unaware of the danger I was in, until I'm looking back on it now, and then I go, oh my goodness, St. George, thank you. You've been praying for me this whole time. So, when you read the lives of the saints, Father Paul, are there patterns that stand out to you? Are there things in the lives of the saints that kind of strike you over time, or are there things now that you've kind of realized about the saints that may have been something that just grew within you over time? I mean, I know you've traveled a lot, you've made a lot of pilgrimages to venerate icons and venerate relics, and I'm just wondering how, I guess this is a better way to ask the question, how has your relationship with the saints changed as you've grown in Orthodoxy and closer to Christ?
Well, I think that with anything that you are learning about, it's more true with something that is concerning faith, because it's more of an encounter than it is something you study from the outside. But the more you live it, the more you understand it. So there's a couple of points I'd make about this. Number one is that one of the things that is always remarkable to me about the lives of the saints from an Orthodox perspective is that there's an unexplainable consistency between the ancient and the modern lives. It's absolutely remarkable that when you read the lives, there's 3 ancient lives that I recommend everybody read. Saint Anthony the Great, Saint Benedict of Nursia, written by his disciple, and written by Saint Gregory of the Great, and then Saint Martin of Tours. That's the one written by his disciple, who met him at the end of his life and even tells you some of the things he witnessed. Saint Anthony, Saint Benedict of Nursia, and Saint Martin of Tours. And then read modern lives. Compare Saint Anthony the Great with Saint Joseph the Hesychist. Compare Saint Martin of Tours with Saint Paisios. I had somebody I told to do that. I said, read Saint Paisios of Mount Athos and Saint Martin. He said they're very different. Saint Martin was a bishop. Saint Paisios was a monk. I said, no, don't look at the outward. Look at the inward. Like really, really pay attention to the inward lives, and you're going to notice a lot of consistency.
Yeah.
Saint Benedict. I don't know which one I would compare to modern lives in that. Maybe Saint Sophronia of Essex, but or Saint Cleopa of Romania. But what you'll find is that there's this remarkable consistency, and that while every saint is different in their own right and distinct, and God works in a unique way with each of them, the spiritual life ultimately is one. And this doesn't change with times and cultures and languages. Ultimately, the Holy Spirit works in a very similar way. Let's see if I can even remember the second point I was going to make, and that was going to be an important one. I forget. I'm trying to remember what you asked, Jeremy. I'm sorry. It's been a long couple of days.
Oh, it's okay. Well, I was just asking how your relationship.
Oh, yeah. I started talking about this. Yeah, that one of the things that I've learned is that I'm going to get out of the lives of the saints different things at different times in my life. There are lives that I've read early on in my real embrace of Orthodoxy. My family converted when I was 12, but it wasn't until I was in college that I really embraced it and began to recognize what the faith is. And I've reread a few lives of saints that I will tell you, the second time through, it was like reading it for the first time and in a completely new way. There were things that I can't believe didn't strike me the first time, but I wasn't ready. And I've found that Christ really uses my reading to help me in my spiritual life, because there are times when I've picked up books that I just thought were the most horrifically boring and uninspiring thing ever, and I put it down and just thought, this is all, like, why do people like this? And then 5-10 years later, I pick it up, and it's the most important book of my life, and I can't understand how I could have ever thought anything less of it. It's I'm on my third reading right now, Wounded by Love. I knew the first time I read it that I was not appreciating it for what it really was. I knew I was missing something. And the second time, light bulbs started to go on. Well, this time I can tell you, I can't read a page, not a single page, without having to pause and just let it rest, because there's such depth and brilliance and grace in every single paragraph. That's the life and wisdom of Saint Porphyrios of Capsula
Mhm.
Libia. So I've learned that, and I is that because of my own spiritual growth? Is that just because I was more ready? God knows. God knows. I don't try to figure these things out. I don't know. I'd like to think that I'm growing in the faith, but the reality is you read a lot of stuff that your mind doesn't understand, but your heart yearns for. Your heart knows that there's something important there. And the more you live, and this is the most important thing I can relay. You have to take what you do understand and put it into practice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not fun. It's not fun initially. It's not enjoyable initially, because the old man inside of you is absolutely resistant and embittered by these changes. The old man likes to live in obscurity and in darkness. He doesn't like to be exposed. And when you start to expose the old man, he fights back.
Mm-hmm.
And so prayer initially is boring, arduous, difficult work. Fasting is mainly, when you start, about what you're not eating. It's not about the grace that you're gaining or the sacrifice you're making. I mean, everything is about what you're missing out on. But you push through. And this is the most important key, I think, in the lives of the saints, is that when you, how do I put this? There's a lot that is quite profound that is not said in profound ways. What I mean by that is when something is obvious to someone, they don't present it in a way that it's a profound statement, because it's just a matter of fact.
There's no death in Christianity.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Dead people in Christianity. I was like,
there's no dead people. Yeah.
But if you start, if you take a step back and really think about what it is that is being said,
oh yeah,
you can often realize that it's actually a complete, it's a paradigm shift that you didn't recognize at first. This is what most of the teaching I like to do is about paradigm shifting. I like to take concepts and say, how can we look at this concept in a new way? Because looking at the world in a new way, you start to realize things that you didn't see before and notice things you didn't see. Well, in the lives of the saints, because their love for Christ was so everyday for them, it was just obvious. You don't really notice how distinct and how powerful it is. But if you go slowly and really take a look at what the meaning behind their lives and how they think, how they respond to struggles, you begin to see things in a really new way. And the main thing that you'll learn from the lives of the saints is they didn't really have a sense of self.
yeah.
The sense of self was wrapped up with one thing: how can I serve and love Christ the best way possible right now? That's it. And when you begin to realize that, you start to understand just how magnificently powerful little things in their lives can be. I used to get wowed by all the big stories, you know, Saint Evmenius walking on his elder Saint Nicephorus the leper, and seeing him floating in prayer and glowing. That was like a powerful thing. But then, as you live the spiritual life more deeply, it's the simple things. It's the simple statements and mundane little things that really kind of stand out. And suddenly you realize that there's a profound depth where you thought there was only simplicity. And so, I don't know. It's a lot of thoughts I'm throwing out there. Maybe they're not that organized right now.
No, it's great.
But,
it's great.
but
I mean,
I have next to me all these books right now. I'm reading. I don't have a lot of time to read, but I had to start this one, even though I'm behind in about 10 books. This one just came out from St. George Press. It's a Romanian press. And so this is called Rivers of Living Water on the Holy Elders of Coelițu Mount Athos. Mm-hmm. It has a newly glorified Saint Dionysius Ignat on the cover. And just, little stories and little sayings in here that I will tell you 10 years ago, I would have read over and I would have not gotten anything out of it. And now I have to pause and just sit with it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just the natural result of me over the years, finally kicking myself and saying, hey, idiot, stop just reading about it and go try to live it a little bit. Just a little tiny fraction, a little speck of what they're doing. Go do it. And suddenly it opens up their lives even more. And again, just like I said, when you read the lives of saints, the scriptures are opened up for the first time. So as you live it, the lives of the saints are opened up anew every time. And that's why the lives of the saints are very much like the ascetical homilies of Saint Isaac the Syrian. You know what the modern saints say about Saint Isaac the Syrian? They say it doesn't matter if you're at the very beginning of the spiritual life or the most advanced that can be, you will always benefit from the ascetical homilies of Saint Isaac. It's the same with the lives of the saints. No matter where you are in your spiritual journey, you will benefit from reading the lives of the saints.
Yeah.
I will read these lives until my last breath.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, what came to mind when you were talking about that was, like I said in the beginning, that their lives they're just trickling in and permeating into me. And at odd moments, I'll remember, like, I don't remember who it was, Jeremy, but you told the story, I mentioned it recently, of it was either a monk or a saint. I don't remember. But he was being robbed, and he helped the robbers carry all the things out of his house. Do you know who this was, Father Paul? Do you know that story, Father Paul?
Yeah, I know it, and I can't think of who it is at this moment either. I forget if it was one of the Desert Fathers. And a similar thing happened with Saint Spyridon, when people went to go steal some of the sheep of his flock. They mystically got stuck to the ground that they were on, and they were there all night, like panicking, like we can't move. And Saint Spyridon, who even as a bishop remained a shepherd, he was so simple, he noticed them in the morning, and he admonished them that they shouldn't steal, that this is wrong, they need to take the fruit of their own labor. But then he said, but I feel really bad for you because you were stuck here all night, you didn't get any rest. As consolation, why don't you take 2 sheep and get out of here?
Yeah.
So he gave them sheep anyway.
Right. Well, what I was going to say about that is that story's come back to me a few times, in the sense that oftentimes when we become self-centered or egotistical about something, we're holding on to something. We're keeping something for ourselves. It's a possession move. And like, I'm just thinking about this in a psychological sense, or even a spiritual sense, and someone comes and tries to wrench that away from you. And so you get a feeling that you're being robbed, right? You can be being robbed without being physically robbed, have people taking things. I mean, even then, I don't think I would help them with my stuff out of the house. But that tells me everything about myself. I'm just like, why would I want to hold on to these things? Like, that was the first question that came to my mind. But then you can also just be robbed. You could be robbed of someone you love when they pass away. You can be robbed of your ego when someone shames you publicly. There's a lot of robbery happening in our lives, and just that short little story that Jeremy told helped me to see how unwilling I was to let that happen to me.
I looked at, I think it's Saint Macarius.
Saint Macarius. Okay.
But there's similar stories from a few other saints. Well, what you said is really important, because the faith is a thief. It's a thief of the ego and the false possessions that we want to hold on to.
Right.
The reason that the faith is so terrifying to us is because there are so many things, not just possessions, but beliefs we have of ourselves, identities that we claim for ourselves, that we hold really tightly to. And Christ doesn't come and try to force. There are times when he'll forcibly open up the hand, but mainly he just beckons us with gentleness, and he asks us, open up. And if we have the courage to do it, when we finally release those things and let go of them, now that we have an open hand, he says, now you can receive much greater gifts. Now you can receive real life. But we have to let go first, which is why, like, I think it's the first step in the ladder of divine ascent is non-possession, possessiveness. The reason for that is for that very reason. If you're holding on to the things of this world and you're grabbing them tightly, you can't grab onto the spiritual things. You can't hold both. You have to let go. So there is the faith is a threat. In fact, I made a video about this, how Christ threatens us. He threatens us every single day. But it's the same way that, I don't know, threaten my children in a sense when I want to give them something good, but they're throwing a fit, and I'll say, if you better stop this, because I don't want you to miss out on something better. We're all going to the movies later. We're going to the theme park, whatever it is we're doing. You're going to have to miss out on this if you can't stop these ways. And we're petulant little children when it comes to Christ. We fold our arms and stamp our feet and say no. Right. And the saints are the ones who say yes. And this is why the modern saints are really great, because a lot of their lives are a little bit more in depth, and you can see examples of how they struggled with this early on, and what they did to overcome it. It's important that we see that struggle and realize it's not easy for them. The saints are the ones who live very, very difficult lives, but because it's out of love, they don't see the difficulty. All they see is the joy they bring Christ, and that brings them joy.
Right. Well, I mean, that was exactly why I was afraid to put Saint Seraphim in the woods, I realized. Because I knew it was going to take something away.
Yeah, we just watched Lord of the Rings.
So good. I just want to add that. I don't want to leave it on that bad note. Sorry, Jeremy. But
sorry, no. Yeah, no, I was just going to say, we watched Lord of the Rings. It was in the theater here. They played it for like over a space of 3 weeks, and it was uncomfortable how much I identified with Gollum, honestly.
Oh.
Really, whereas and it was about identity, and it was about those false identity and those false things that you hold on to, and you're like, my precious, and the obsession is real. I really, it really caused me to reflect on my own attachment to certain things, and attachment to certain ways of being, or ways of kind of like narratives that I have about what's happened in my life, or what's happening around me. You have these certain ways you have of looking at things that are comfortable, even though they're extremely uncomfortable. And I was called to, well, I remember the prayer that you told me about a long time ago, Father Paul, with Saint Basil, where he was praying, Lord, illumine my darkness.
Saint Gregory Paul.
Oh, Saint Gregory. Yeah, sorry. Because I just remember, I could see myself as Gollum in a cave alone, obsessed with staring at my little story, and just.
I'm going to make a bunch of people really mad right now. As much as I love to read, I've never read Lord of the Rings. I want to. I just don't. Again, I don't have time to read anymore. If I read 2 pages, it's considered a successful day. But I will say, even from the movies, there's so much truth in that particular character, of one who is gripping onto something, and that becomes his all, and it both delights and torments him at the same time.
Right.
Yes.
And it's really important that we understand this. That again, Lives of the Saints prove this, and their writings prove it. Temptation would not be temptation if it didn't bring us some sort of enjoyment and pleasure. But while that initial gratification is brought, in the end, it ruins us. And that's why I like to remind people, don't think of asceticism as what you're not fulfilling. I'm not fulfilling my lust. I'm not fulfilling my gluttony. I'm not fulfilling. Remind yourself of what those passions are stealing from you. What are they taking from you? They're taking away your sense of, for men and lust, masculinity and self-control. How dare the demons? How dare we give them the right to steal that away from us? We can talk about any passion in the world, and we can talk about what it ultimately steals from us.
Mm-hmm.
But that message only gets you halfway. Again, just to bring it back to what the topic is, the reason the Lives of the Saints are so significant is because they show you what that can be replaced with. And Saint Maximus, he says something really interesting here. He says there's 2 ways of living. You can live for the passions, which initially bring you much gratification, but in the end ruin you, and they make your life horrible. Think of like eating, sugary foods all the time. Pleasure in the mouth, you get fat, lazy, and full of all illnesses as you get older. Or he says you can live the opposite way. You live in asceticism out of sacrifice for Christ, which initially is a deprivation, but in the long term, it actually fills you with joy. Yeah. And that's why the saints are full of peace and joy and love, and they're unshakable in that. So it's it's an important question. What are my passions actually stealing from me in the end? And if you understand that, you can actually learn to hate them, which is the goal. We should hate the passions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Jordan Peterson talked about this a little bit in the sense that when he did the, what was that called? He did the Big Five personality test, but then he had this other thing where you look at the past
self-authoring.
Self-authoring. And he said the most important part of that was the imagining the future you if you didn't do something about the way things are. That's the thing that motivates most people. Interestingly enough, it's not so much them running from the past, but running from the future if they don't do something,
Yeah, that's one of the questions I like to ask my parishioners, especially in confession, is how can you lay your head on your pillow at night and look back at the day and see somebody who served Christ well that you can be proud of? And St. Paisios calls that the good pride. He says a good spiritual pride is when you can say, I served Christ well today.
Right. So I have a little bit of a question here, because this has always stood out to me while we do these Lives of the Saints together, Jeremy and I. One of the things I've said is they're not prescriptive, it seems to me, they're descriptive. So, you have St. Macarius, I think is who you said that was helping the robbers with all his possessions. But then you have St. Gabriel of Georgia who lights the, isn't that who it was?
Yeah,
lights the flag of Lenin on fire. There he is, and I don't remember the name of them, but it was a mother and child, and they've stuck in my mind too. Jeremy, I think they were, this is like early 300s, 400s. And the emperor or the king or some person in authority took the child and said something about, that the child should, renounce Jesus or renounce Christ.
Julita and Kizikos.
Okay. And the kid kicked him. And I was like, I like that kid.
we just baptized somebody who took the name Julita, and I was so happy.
Oh,
the kid kicked the governor, I think it was, maybe the governor emperor, and then he threw him down the stairs and killed him that way. He was like 2 or 3. And the mother rejoiced, and she said, you just made him a martyr. Let me join him. And so he killed her too. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. But what I'm saying is like this has been the beautiful thing about the Lives of the Saints, is that it's not prescriptive. Growing up in the family that I grew up in, everything was prescriptive. It was like, you do this and you don't do that. And, but there was, somehow it seems to me, and maybe it's just the way I am, but it seems to me that Lives of the Saints would not fit very well in my parents' Protestant worldview, because they weren't all acting the same, right? They were all doing what they were led to do. I don't know how to explain it.
Well, can I add a couple thoughts about this?
Yeah.
It's very much about, remember the ultimately what makes for a saint. Saint just comes from the Latin word sanctus, it means holy.
Right.
So even in Greek, you see an icon of Saint George, it says Agios Yorgos. The literal translation is Holy George. Well, what makes one holy? If Christ dwells within them. It's no longer I who live, but Christ dwells in me. Now, how that is expressed is different, because Christ, and this is the first big point I would make, is that we believe, Orthodoxy is a religion, not a cult. And I've seen people say all religions are cults. All religions are cults. Well, define for me what a cult is. I'll tell you, one of the distinctive features of a cult is it has a particular idea of how a person should act and be, and everyone tries to fit into that mold.
Yeah.
Whereas a true religion will take you as a unique creation of God and make you flourish. There will be things that are common from one saint to another, but there are also things that are unique, that shine forth in a way such that St. Peter is always St. Peter and he's never St. Paul, and St. Paul is always St. Paul and he's never St. Peter.
Right.
And there are things about them that are unique, and there's different expressions based on the culture you're in, what sort of state of life you're in. The fool for Christ is not going to be the same as the emperor. The emperor is not going to be the same as the hermit. The hermit's not going to be the same as a mother. There are unique aspects, and a true religion will take those unique aspects and sanctify them, and take that uniqueness and make it shine.
Yeah.
So it's really important that we understand that. So you're right; they're not prescriptive. And the second thing I would say, I tend not to. I don't pay much attention to the comments in videos that I do. I get little notifications on my phone when I get a comment. I just swipe them away. I don't read them. But every now and then I see the first few words, and the only ones that I actually go out of my way to read are the negative ones, when I can see that it's negative. But they're fun for me. Sometimes they're good. Sometimes I can agree with them and say, that's a good point. A lot of times they're just mean, but those make me laugh. But there was one comment that I was getting quite frequently that actually really it made me really sad, genuinely sad for people. And it was when I told the story of St. Paisios of Mount Athos, when he found two monks who were quarreling and they would not reconcile whatsoever. And he went to them. He was a young monk at this point. He went to them and he went to the first one. He said, you're mad at so-and-so, but actually the thing you're mad about, that was actually my fault. I'm the one who did it. Be mad at me, not him. He's actually completely innocent. Then he went to the other one and said the same thing. The thing you're mad at him about, it was actually my fault. Like I'm the one who did this. I'm the one who caused the gossip and the slander. It was me. Please forgive me. Don't be mad at him though. This is a misunderstanding. It's all my fault. And the comment I got from many Protestants was, oh, so I guess Christians can lie now? You call this guy a saint because he lied? And I was like stunned by this. And I thought his goal was to reconcile these two monks, and out of humility, in imitation of Christ, by the way, to take their sin and place it on himself. And we're gonna decry this because we're worried about the outward moralism of this and not the inward heart. This was an act of supreme humility and love. And we live in a broken world, and sometimes supreme humility and love requires a little lie. Now, in the grand scheme of things, I also explained in another video, it's not a lie, because we understand that our sin is never personal. And so we do take the sin of the world upon ourselves. Not in the way, of course, that Christ does. I don't want anyone to take me out of context here. Yeah. But in the sense that maybe there wouldn't be so much sin in the world if people were inspired by my holiness, which I don't have. So their sin is my fault. Those two monks were quarreling because of me. Right. And this is, I don't know if you can hear, my kids are bouncing upstairs. If you can hear that banging, I'm sure they're just doing prostrations. Vigorous prostrations. I was really sad by that. Yeah. Because it was stuck on the idea that Christianity is moralism. Yeah. No, Christianity is a living sacrifice of love for Christ and neighbor. That's beautifully put. And Saint Paisios lived that. And to decry that because it was quote unquote not true, it was a lie. Yeah. I just thought, my goodness, you're missing out on the beautiful vivifying faith that we have. Yeah. You're missing out on this.
I call that the inheritance we received from Immanuel Kant. And I had that I think it's Saint Dionysius, the one whose brother was murdered, and he found the murderer in the barn. And he told the police that he let the man go, and then he told the police he didn't know where he went, which was a lie. Okay. And I agree with you. Like, Christianity is not moralistic. And so, and these things can't be seen in that framework at all. You can't talk about, I don't even know. It was obvious to me in the story that the man sacrificed his own need for revenge.
Or even just justice.
Yeah, but it's his brother.
Just like arresting. It's his brother.
His brother, So, a brother whom he, I assume, loved, right? Probably did, because he was a godly man. So, it's like, No, he let go of all of that, right? It's kind of like someone robbed him and he helped them take all the stuff out of his house. From a Jungian perspective.
Jeremy, I think you told, did you end up doing the life of Saint Simeon the Fool for Christ?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is, we have a hand painted icon of him right here, and that my youngest son is named for him. This is why I love the Fools for Christ so much, is because they actually, again, I like paradigm breaking ideas, and the Fools for Christ, especially Saint Simeon, absolutely destroys the idea of moralism in the faith.
Yes, exactly.
And this was a man who is so holy, that God saw it fit that he not be buried among the unknown beggars, but mystically transferred his relics to we don't know where. This is a man who is so holy that as he was being processed for burial, a man looked out of his window and saw angels procession with him and singing hymns. If God has approved him, who are we to judge him and question the way he lived? This is a man who did many things that scandalized people beyond belief. And yet he would spend his evenings in prayer for those who treated him poorly, despite the fact that he himself, did things that probably deserved to be treated poorly. We can't understand these things because, indeed, we are fools for Christ. The world will see us as foolish. And the Fools for Christ take this to an extreme and show you there's no place for moralism in the faith. No. Christ acted in ways that are incomprehensible to us. And if we apply the strict moralistic standards, probably making a whip and driving people out of the temple would be considered, not such a great thing to do.
Right.
But this is beyond human comprehension. And again, it's one of the reasons I love the lives of the saints, is because they reveal to you the heart of the matter in a way that sometimes the head doesn't understand. And that early on, that really frustrated me when I read a story and I'd go, but I don't get it. And now I love it. And I go, that makes no sense here, but it makes sense here. And that's our faith. Amen. Thank God for that, because I don't want a faith that I can figure out all the time. It's not living, Right. Just like I don't want my wife to act in the exact way that I want in every situation of life and say everything how boring life would be. How boring. Right. I like that my wife is a mystery to me.
There was an old Twilight Zone episode about that where this guy was like, his wife was like, just ignored him all the time, and he wanted her to fawn over him. And he went to this old magic store, and there was a potion in there. And the guy said, he's like, do you have any kind of love potion where you can make my wife like love me? Like, like really love me, like adore me? And he's like, oh yeah, I got that. He's like, well, I'm sure it's going to be pretty expensive though, right? Like that's good. He's like, no, it's like $1. He's like, $1? He goes, yeah. He goes, and he was just looking. He was like kind of waiting. He's like, yeah, let me go get it. And he's coming. And there was this one really beautiful bottle on there, and he pulls this beautiful bottle down, and the guy's like, oh, you don't want to touch that one. He goes, why? He goes, oh, that's a poison. It just takes one drop and it'll kill you. And he goes, oh, wow. And he's like, yeah, don't put that down. He's like, well, how much is that one? He goes, oh, that's like $10,000, but don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. But here's your potion. And he gave it to him, and he goes home and gives it to his wife. And then she's like just fawning over him all the time. And he's like, oh, this is amazing. This is great. And then it shows like 6 months later, and she's still fawning over him every time he walks in the door. And he's just like, and you can see, and the final scene of the movie is him, or the final scene of the show is him going back to the magic shop and saying, let's talk about that other potion.
No TV like the Twilight Zone. I mean, so many episodes are beautiful parables.
Yeah, really.
Really, really quite brilliant.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for, right?
Yeah, I didn't mean to distract. It's just such a fun story. That was
a good one.
My favorite episodes. But are you available for a little longer? We could take some questions we've got some people in the audience. Would you be willing to take some questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Oh, in the meantime, there was a story that I wanted you to, if you would share with us, the story of the sister at the monastery who was upset because she couldn't feed the goats. Do you remember the story? You told it a while ago about, so she went out and there was mud. It was a big rainstorm. And she was upset because she couldn't feed the goats. And she wasn't like, they were talking about getting rid of the goats because it was too much work to take care of them. I swear it was you who told me the story.
I don't remember.
Was it not you?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'll tell the story. So there was maybe you'll remember. There was a monastery and they had goats and chickens and apparently it was like a lot of work and they were having a hard time taking care of them. And it was like a during the war and they couldn't take care of the animals properly. And they were always afraid that they wouldn't be able to have enough food to feed the animals. And this one particular day, one of the sisters went out to feed the goats and there was like a foot of mud or 2 feet of mud between the walkway and like where the hay was. And she couldn't. Do you remember the story now?
Keep going though.
Okay. Why don't you tell the story?
I'm trying to remember where I even read it. I don't remember where I got that story.
I thought you got it in Romania.
I probably did, but
I think you got it in Romania. Yeah, because so anyway, she was going and she was just really upset and then and she just felt like she couldn't do anything. She was kind of trapped, and it was the former abbess of the monastery who was in repose, but came walking up to her, or was in the air and was talking to her, appeared to her, and said, "What's wrong?" And she goes, I can't take care of the goats, and we can't even feed the goats." And she was like, Don't worry about it. There's always going to be food for the goats. There's always going to be food for the chickens. You're going to have so much food you won't even know what to do with it. And she said, and why are you waiting so long to just ask us for help? That's what the saints are for. We will help you with the smallest. There's nothing too small for us to do for you. We can help you. And then she turned, made the sign of the cross, and like all the mud split apart and went away, and there was an open path, and she was able to go up, get the hay, and feed the sheep. But I was touched by the idea that I have a tendency to like think, oh, I can't bother St. George, like one of the greatest saints in history. I can't bother him with like, my car won't start. Like, that's stupid, or whatever. Right. It's just like, it's easy to dismiss that my needs are significant. And I was really touched by that story because she was like admonishing the sister of like, don't hesitate to ask for the saints to intervene. We're all just waiting. We're all just standing here waiting for you to ask us to help you. We will help you. So, anyway, I was waiting to see if we had any questions, but I was telling the story while we were waiting for questions.
Well, Slack is asking, how much beard is too much, asking for a friend.
I wouldn't know because I can't grow a good beard, so mine's not enough.
Joy says, Father, it's a blessing to have you with us. Regarding relationship, per our traditions, how is it known that relationships with particular saints are built? Prayer, readings, visits to sites, etc.
Yeah, you answered it at the end. The saints that I felt closest to and have felt closest to either came to me in some way. Saint Nectarius is a big influence in my life, and there were stories about him that I was told at some point and forgotten, and suddenly they popped back in my memory and I couldn't get rid of them, and suddenly I had a desire to read more about them. So we can read their lives, the Akathist services, or there's like canons, or what's called a Paraclesis service to various saints. obviously visiting their relics. The saints like take the sacrifice it takes to go visit their relics, and like really honors that in many ways. There's many blessings that come from visiting their relics, or even just venerating their icon. It's interesting because there are saints who I read their lives and I feel like this great zeal for them, but I don't feel a closeness to them. And then suddenly, other saints that I don't really have a great zeal for, and suddenly I feel very close to them, and it kind of fluctuates. I can't always control that, and that's I've learned to just kind of accept that. That's right. Okay. Like that story I told about St. George of Cernica. I thought I was going to go to his relics and just feel this massive, like connection with him, and I felt like it was like nice that you came and venerated my relics, but go to Saint Kalinik, and here's the saint who I have like no connection to whatsoever, and suddenly boom. I had other ones too. There's another Saint George, he's up here, Saint George the Pilgrim, who I knew a little bit about. I'll tell you an interesting thing that happened there. This icon, it's kind of an interesting icon. It almost looks like it's made of tiles. And my wife was visiting a monastery here in the United States. She took a picture in the bookstore and said, "Do you want anything?" And I said, "Well, I don't know who that is in that icon, but that icon is just so unique. Like, can you just grab that one for me?" And so she did. And she brought it. And I read the little that was available about this St. George the Pilgrim. And, I liked him. I wouldn't say that I felt like particularly close to him or anything. And then when I went to Romania in June and venerated his relics, that was another one of those whoosh moments where like the fragrance from him, I feel St. George is with me now all the time. Like I feel such a connection with. So sometimes they choose you. I want to show you, by the way, St. George of Cernica. I told you he's just got an awesome icon and a great beard. So that's what he looks like.
Oh yeah.
So
nice.
I still love him and I love that icon, but St. Kalinik is the one who really stood out to me. So I'll also tell you that for some saints that I felt very close to at one time and then didn't for a while, I found that if I really started asking their intercessions constantly, that sense of their closeness came back. So it's true. They want to be badgered. I talk about the Panagia as being like the most wonderful mother in the world, because no mother likes to be like badgered, by the kid. The kids ask for something once, twice, maybe 3 times is okay. My kids have a rule in the house, by the way. I gave them this rule that when they think something is funny that they saw on TV or heard from a friend, they're allowed to repeat it 3 times. And then I don't want to hear it again because they'll just keep saying it over and over and over and over again. But the Panagia is not like that. She says, badger me, keep asking. Right. Because that's what forms the relationship. That's the conversation that causes it. So we should do that.
Yeah.
I had an experience one time. I just was talking with my wife over a chat, and I just said, my old eyes have seen too much stuff on the internet, and she sent me an icon of Saint Paraskevi in return, and I didn't know the story of Saint Paraskevi. And there's in the icon, she's holding a bowl, and there's eyes in the bowl, and I almost fell out of my chair. Like I was at work, and it hit me in a deep place I didn't know existed inside of me when I saw that icon. And ever since then, I've just had a really deep connection with Saint Paraskevi, where it's that purifying. Her intercessions have definitely helped heal my eyes. So.
Is that the saint that her site was? Oh no, that was with Saint Bridget.
Yeah. Saint Paraskevi was the one who threw tar at the emperor because he thought that she was a witch and that the tar wasn't hot. And so she threw tar at him and it burned his eyes. And then she said, "The same Christ who you're asking me to renounce is now going to heal your sight." And made the sign of the cross over him, and then he was able to see again. And he released her, and then his successor hunted down Saint Paraskevi, and she was martyred.
I just remember the story with Saint Bridget, where she was with a young woman or an older woman who was born blind and never could see. I think it was an older woman, actually. And she...
a nun, yeah.
She was a nun, and she asked her, or she gave her sight back, and then she asked her to blind her again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking of when you were telling that story. Wouldn't that be nice if you could be blinded, Jeremy?
We're slowly moving in that direction.
My wife and I met actually a monk in Romania years ago, just 3 months before he reposed, and he was a very, very famous holy elder named Elder Teofil Pereon, and he was blind. This is a picture I took of him. Just a couple months before he reposed, and they say, of course, about him, boy, I was a lot skinnier back then. Look at that. That was a different time.
I don't even recognize you. Wow.
Yeah. But as with so many of these saints, they say, you know, he may have been blind, but he saw better than everybody. And people would go in to confess with him, and they wouldn't have to say a word. He'd say everything. So,
yeah.
We have a question from Lance. How do you recommend to new catechumens coming from a Protestant background to start engaging with saints and icons?
Yeah, don't do what I did, which is to become an Orthodox consumerist and buy every icon of every saint that you liked and every book to the point where you had 80 books in your shelves and you've only read 3 of them. Go slow. So my rule for myself right now is I'm allowed to buy 1 book after I finished 3. So not a lot of purchasing happening lately, unfortunately. So go slow, be deliberate. I would really recommend an initial focus on the modern saints and elders. I'm not saying avoid the ancient ones. You can buy a book called the Synaxarion, or the Maneon, or Synaxarion is really what you'll buy, which is Lives of the Saints, the Great Lives of the Saints. You can get them from like St. Herman of Alaska Press. They have St. Dimitri of Rostov's. And it's 1 volume per month. You're not going to go through all 12 volumes in a year. I mean, there's just too much reading. But you can read 2 volumes a year, and you get little smatterings of saints. Some of those lives are only a page long. Some are 30 pages. You'll get a really great love for Lives of Saints that way. But if you're going to read longer lives, I would recommend really focusing on a lot of the modern saints and elders, because they speak more to our time. And because they're speaking to a culture that is largely secularized, they know how to say things in a way that kind of touches us in a way that the ancient saints took for granted. So that's my recommendation, is if you want to read longer lives, focus more on the modern saints and elders. If you want a good overview of many saints, buy 1 or 2 volumes from the Great Lives of Saints. Then if you want to go really simple, the OCA website, oca.org, is a great resource where every day you can look at the Lives of the Saints and just pick 1 or 2. And some are going to be, like I said, a couple paragraphs. Some are going to be quite a bit longer. But it's a great way just to get to know the saints. A strategy that I love, that I don't recommend enough to new people in the parish that I serve, but I recommend it very much, is in your local parish, look on the walls, look on the icon stands, and pick 1 or 2 figures a week, and just make that your commitment. I'm going to look at their lives, so that next week I can look at those icons and I know who that is and how they lived, and I can take something from it. Very quickly, that parish will feel more and more familiar, and you'll feel like your friends are spotting the walls.
Now you're calling me to repentance, Father Paul, because I actually gathered all of those, and I need to typeset them into a book. I just haven't finished it.
Yeah, it's just a great way to begin, because there's so many. There's so you can feel overwhelmed. You don't need to learn all of them. You need to spend time with a few at a time. 1 or 2, maybe 3 at a time, and just really you don't read the Lives of Saints, you drink them in. If you want a really great introduction to Lives of Saints, look, you can find this online. Saint Justin Popovich has an article simply called An Introduction to the Lives of the Saints. He published a series of Lives of the Saints in Serbian, and his introduction has been translated, and it's a great place to start with who the saints are and why they're important.
Okay.
I have him back there too, and a hand-painted icon right there.
Okay. Jeremy introduced me to Father Roman Braga. We did a full episode on him, which got taken down because we totally stole almost all the clips from his interview that he
from Beyond Torture.
So I took it away. I took all the clips out and put it back up, but it's kind of a weird episode because we're talking about something that's not there anymore. But yeah, I've really gotten to know him, and actually a couple people who I don't know, but I know them from the comment section. One lady, she knew him, and fairly well from what I could gather. And got to meet him on a regular basis, and that was great. As a modern saint, like you were recommending, that was really great to encounter Father Roman Braga. And then there's another guy, what's his name? George
Calciu.
Yeah,
this is one thing that we have a benefit today that has never existed before in the history of the church, where we can actually look up videos of saints
and hear them.
I love the little video. I think they entitled it "Two Saints Meet," and it's Saint Cleopa of Romania with Elder Thaddeus of Serbia meeting each other and just kissing each other's hand, and just the love that they have for each other. It's such a beautiful little sight. But again, when you actually get down and read their lives, then you appreciate even more who you're looking at, and you realize like what went into this figure and why. But there's nothing like meeting somebody yourself, though. You get into the presence of somebody who's genuinely holy, and they don't have to say a word. You don't have to say a word. You go, my goodness, I'm encountering heaven right now. Heaven just radiates from their hearts, and that's an unbelievable experience.
Yeah.
I wish I had gotten to meet Father Roman in this life, but God willing, to the next life, because his little 2-minute clip, if people haven't watched it, called "God is Not in Books," is the video that I have every inquirer watch, and eventually I'm going to do a 3-part series. I hope, God willing, an hour each, 3 hours on that 2 minutes, because it says everything.
Yeah,
it's a life-changing 2 minutes.
Oops, sorry. I pulled it up while you were talking. Sorry.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to pull it up while you were talking.
No, you should.
But
better Father Rowan Braga than me.
Here we go.
God is not in the books. And I learned this lesson in prison. And God bless the communists, because they put the priest in prison. The priest need a little imprisonment because it's a wonderful experience there. Father said that I was in a solitary confinement for almost 3 years. So I was just by myself in a small cell surrounded by 4 walls at the cell. I didn't have anything to look. 11 years I didn't see a pencil, a piece of paper, because communist imprisonments are not like American prison with television and the library and champagne on New Year's Day. But, no, it's a communist prison. They want, especially the intellectual class, to be destroyed, to become beasts like animals, and they don't give them anything to read. But that is the mystery. Instead of becoming like animals, we became ourselves. When you are free, you are the slave of the books. So many books. I have to read all of them. You don't have time to be yourself because you are made out of quotations. Yeah. We're there. There is no book. There is nothing else. You have to go somewhere. You don't have any perspective to look at. The windows were very high. We couldn't even touch them, and it was very small. So you have to go somewhere. And you go inside.
That is the greatest explanation of the Christian faith I have ever. I will never get even close to touching.
Nope, sorry.
How magnificent that explanation of Christianity is. That is the definition of Christianity.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was listening to his almost 1 hour interview that he did. And when he was talking about prayer, I just started to weep. It was towards the end, I just remember. And, he said, sometimes a prayer is a sigh. Sometimes it's, oh Lord, And I could imagine him in this tiny cell, what he's saying there about it's not in the books. It's also not in the many, many words, I think, that's what it feels like to me. And that's why he would say that, because you really, I think we've all had moments where we've shared someone's grief with them or whatever. There's not a lot of words, right? There's just a sharing, a sighing, a being there together. And that's what it feels like he was talking about, Yeah, it was really good.
I got to tour the Pitești prison. I can't remember if I could be wrong. I don't think he underwent the Pitești experiment, but he was in the Pitești prison.
Yeah,
there were a few of the prisoners that were actually put through the experiment compared to how many it held hundreds. But I'll tell you, that building, the walls scream in silence, suffering and grace. And it's just the most unique. We left, myself, my son, and the one other guy with us. We left that just in a daze. It was indescribable being there. I can't put it into words. But the room in which they began the Pitești experiment, which is a horrific. I mean, hospital room 4, I think it was what it was. It's now a chapel. And they have relics of some of the martyrs there and some of the other saints, and just like there's you're right, yeah. The reason that even the words, even the lengthy prayers, those are meant to form the heart and to form our proper relationship with Christ, to set the stage for what our relationship with Christ should be like. But when the heart is formed by those things, then indeed the words are no longer so necessary. Saint Porphyrios would walk along, and he wouldn't even say, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, the sinner. He wouldn't say the short version, Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. He would just say, Jesus.
Yeah.
And that was it. And one of his disciples asked him, they said, why is that all you say? He said, all I need is the name. The name itself just expresses everything. That's all I need. And your saint, Saint Seraphim of Sarov, he talks about reaching that state of we might call it ecstasy, but you have to understand that in the proper terms, but to the place where he said, then prayer is no longer necessary.
Right.
Why? Because you're communing directly. Now you commune like the angels in silence.
Yeah, I just recently, because I'm very particular about encountering, and I've had many encounters in my life, like with wild animals, and in the forest, and I don't know. I don't want to sound too crazy, so I'll just. But so I really do steer clear from the books, reading about biographies and all this stuff. But I did listen to recently on the acquisition of the Holy Spirit, and I was reminded of Father Roman Braga listening to it.
Yeah,
it sounded like the same person. I could imagine. There was like the same, but that's like you were saying earlier, that's Christ in them, right? Yeah.
Which indeed looks like foolishness to the world.
Yeah.
Saint Seraphim, beaten by robbers who find nothing on him, to the point where he's hunched over for the rest of his life and uses an axe as a cane. And he goes to their own sentencing to intercede on their behalf and say, they don't need to go to prison. It's fine. Let them go. That's not just forgiveness. That extends well beyond forgiveness.
Yeah.
That's a divine love that is not understandable to this world.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was one other question I wanted to make sure I shared. Father, do you perceive what I mean when I say that the saints on the murals on our walls come alive, that they are cheering, especially during Paschal Eucharist?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I know what you mean, but I can tell you what I think you mean because of what I experience, and that's that. There are many times when I, as the priest, turn around and bless the congregation and say, "Peace be with you all." And it's a weekday liturgy where there's only 6 or 7 or 10 people there, and I feel like the church is just as full as on a Sunday. And you can't help it. It's a sense that you can't. It's not just merely psychological. I can tell you that it's not merely psychological. And there are times when with certain icons, I look at them and I very much feel like I'm the one. And that's what part of the reason that the perspective in icons is an inverse. Because it's the saints coming to us and viewing us rather than us just viewing the saints. So you notice the vanishing point instead of like a normal painting it's actually the opposite. And a lot of people said, well, that's because the Byzantines didn't understand perspective. How hard is it to look at buildings and realize that it's not that hard. But they drew it, they painted it opposite on purpose because there's a sense in which the saint is breaking through to our reality. And actually they're the real ones. We're actually trying to be sucked into their reality, not bringing them into our world. It's the other way. So there's a spiritual reality that's present there. And I will tell you, there are times when I stand before an icon and I feel like I'm standing before an icon. Now it's mostly my perception. That's the problem. St. John of San Francisco, they said when he would go into a church, he would do bows and venerate every single icon. And he would venerate the icons as if he was greeting an old friend. That's how we should always be. But even within my limited scope and understanding, there are times when I go venerate an icon and it's almost like a greeting, and I go, oh, you're here. You're here. Hello. Thank you. Can I send out a mission for your viewers because I do have to I can hear my kids screaming. I need to go. Sure. To bed. So one of the things I really enjoy doing is just like I said, look at the saints on your walls and go write down their names and then go learn about them during the week. I will sometimes see icons that I absolutely fall in love with and I have no idea who the figure is. And I found one and I've done my online research. I cannot find a thing about his life. And so I'm going to send people on a mission. We have a Saint Odysius. I had never heard this before, but he's one of the new martyrs, which means one of the martyrs of the Turkish yoke. And here he is. And I love this icon. I thought it was just a beautiful icon. Oh, wow. And I bought 2 books on the new martyrs of the Turkish yoke, and there's nothing about him in either of these books. I've found 2 more icons of him on Etsy, but I can't find a thing about his life. So I'm going to send your viewers on a mission that if you find anything about the life and martyrdom of Saint Odysius, either send it to Jeremy or Shari or find my email and send it to me. But what a beautiful icon.
Yeah. And this is new martyr of the Turkish yoke. You said?
Yes. I've been on a new martyr life reading kick lately. I've been reading a couple a day and it's becoming a little bit of an obsession. But
what is the Turkish, like the new martyrs
under the Ottoman Empire there? So the Turks, since they overtook many of the Orthodox lands, there are many incredible martyrs, many of them wonder workers, many of them who their lives in martyrdom seem very mundane, but then they'd leave their bodies to hang and they'd be fragrant, and the Turks wouldn't know what to do with them. And many of them who were Orthodox and then apostatized, became Muslim, and then came back to Christ and were martyred because of that. I mean, incredibly inspiring stories, really inspiring stories. One of my favorite ones is Saint Aquilina. So if anyone's never read the life of Saint Aquilina, I have her somewhere back there. I rearranged the icon, so I don't remember where I put her, but she's back there somewhere. Saint Aquilina is an incredible figure. That's one of the ones who, one of these days, I need to get somebody baptized in the parish to take the name Aquilina. She's one of my favorites. So, the new martyrs of the Turkish yoke. Some great reading, but I cannot find anything about Saint Odysius. So that's the task.
All right, we'll get right on that for you. See if we can.
Well, thanks again for joining us, Father Paul. We're really honored to have you.
Thank you.
Your time is really precious, so thank you very much. And may we have your blessing?
Indeed. May the Lord, through the intercessions of the Theotokos and Ever Virgin Mary, and of all the saints, have mercy on you, bless you, keep you, protect you, guide you, and inspire you in your own lives of holiness. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thanks a lot. Thanks for everyone for joining us. Thanks for coming along. And, if you want to beat somebody up, come to my parish and you can beat me up and I'll introduce you to Father Paul.
It was really a pleasure to meet you, Father Paul, and thank you for your time today.
Oh, you as well. Thank you so much. And good night.
Good night.